in the meantime, if you guys want to talk about inflation, I'm all about it. I've been just like reading all about the 1970s lately, and I'm super fascinated about what the Fed's next move is going to be because I think that they are in probably the worst situation.
Are really truly one of the most evil things that a country can do upon its citizens. It has so many unseen effects, and he estimated about 50% of the world's problems are from fiat inflation, and just the fact that every time money is stolen from a group of people, it causes misallocation of resources. It causes poor incentives. It causes malinvestment. It causes people to act in ways that they otherwise wouldn't. And it causes a slowdown in the progression of human technology. All these knockoff effects of just printing money that nobody really thinks about, and because they're not direct, but it causes all of these secondary side effects, because when you mess with the money, you're messing with everything, because money touches everything. And again, I can't express how much I learned from that podcast, and I really recommend everyone else to go check that out, spend the time listening.
Awesome. Thank you guys for allowing me to ask a question. But I
Corey,
haven't.
can you get closer
Oh,
to your mic? You
Mike,
sound really far away.
yeah, can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's better. Go for it.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you guys. Yeah, I haven't been in the crypto space too long. About a year and a half now. But some of the guys that are on here, I follow on Twitter, and I have a specific question. I haven't lived through much of the ups and downs of cryptocurrency trends, but I know that I lived through the inflation process where the more money we print in the economy, at least the U.S. economy, the more inflation there is, and the value of all these cryptocurrencies increases along with everything else, including real estate and other other assets, cars, precious metals, whatever. But my question is, the Fed increased the interest rates by 25 basis points just recently, and there was a little bit of FUD in the market, and now I believe on May 4th, they're planning on increasing it by possibly 50 basis points. Now that's speculation. They had mentioned on TV that over the news that they will be more aggressive on the next increase. So I'm assuming it'll be something close to 50 basis points. But just with the increase of these interest rates, and they plan on increasing rates by maybe 4 or 5 times over the next year or two. How is that going to affect the market? Do you guys think that we're in that phase where we can use Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies to hedge against the market now? Because I know that the stock market is going to take a little bit of a dive. So do you guys think that we're at that phase where we can separate from the stock market and use it similar to gold and precious metals and other items into hedging against the interest rates increasing?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. I think that you should always take what the Fed says with a whole gallon of salt, because the Fed has never predicted a recession. They say everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. Oh, there's an emergency. Okay, everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. Oh, there's an emergency. So it's like, I don't know why we listen to these people at all, because everything that they say and everything that they do never match up in the long term. Um, Interest rates, like 25 basis points is a joke in interest rates. Like
It does
this,
nothing because our inflation is going up at a faster rate. It's gonna
right?
do
And
nothing.
if you look at like the history of interest rates, they usually live between 5 and 10%, and right now we're at 25 basis points. and it's 0.25%. And then you have to look at what those interest rates that the Fed sets, which again, why is the Fed setting interest rates? But given that, what is that going to affect? That's going to affect mortgage rates for sure. It's going to affect bond yields. And then it's going to affect the interest on the national debt, which all of us in the US are liable for. So I think there's an extremely limited amount of hiking they can do. And there's going to be an emergency, and then the policy is going to change because the simple math on $30 trillion worth of debt, and most of it short term, is that once it gets past like 2 or 3%, it would take an enormous amount of the total tax revenue to cover the interest on the debt. And that's just not something that a civilization will put up with. It's much easier to have zero interest rates and print money than it is to actually pay the interest on the debt at higher levels. And I think Josh is right. Like, this really is a truly crazy time. The last time we had any type of inflation, the debt was considerably smaller, and they could pump it up to 15 or 20% to actually slow down lending, reduce the supply of money, somewhat, and get inflation under control. But now it seems like they can't get past that 2 or 3% level without causing massive civil unrest. And in my opinion, the government or politicians are always going to choose to delay a problem than to face a problem. And especially something that big when the economy is really fragile, especially in an environment where there's war and uncertainty on that level. I just can't imagine that they're going to raise interest rates to anything meaningful before there's another emergency and they have to drop it to zero, or they just completely change the monetary system. Like that's coming in the not too distant future either. And maybe they have one cycle left before they have to do that. But again, referring back to that video, that the dollar has been one of the most fiat successful currencies ever, and it's down 99.7% in the last 150 years. So, this game is on a time, and the time is quickly running out.
Corey, did that help answer your question?
Yes. It did. Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you, Josh. And then in regards to a Bitcoin kind of coming to the picture.
Something else I'll add there is if you look at the history of Bitcoin, most of its gains have been made in rising interest rate hikes. We saw 2020 when they dropped it to zero, and that was a huge thing. But I think from like 2013 to 2018, they were raising rates, and rates got as high as I think 2.5% or 2.75 before they dropped them to zero again. So, I don't think it hurts Bitcoin long term. I think it's a very short term effect, but Bitcoin adoption, I think, outpaces everything over, a year or two time frame. And that is the dominant price driver, is more and more people and companies and institutions adopting Bitcoin versus the short term trading action. That adoption is going to be much more powerful force over a year's time.
Yeah, hey Zach, like it's interesting, right? Because you can definitely make a strong case. Like there's currently like a significant amount of potential headwinds against Bitcoin and crypto, but then I think people are missing also the tailwinds that are ongoing with the adoption curve of an asset class. So it's definitely a combination of both, and I guess it just depends on how much weight you put into either one. But yeah, I would very much agree with what you just said there. I feel. Yes, there are some things that, globally obviously aren't perfect, for Bitcoin to go up and crypto to go up. But this adoption curve, we're going to consistently see, in my opinion, over, the coming 5-10 years. It's just it's just a matter of, it's headwinds, but it's just not enough headwinds unless there's some like global collapse and really bad black swans. And then of course, but barring that, I just don't think it's going to make it's not going to stop it over the high time frame. Pictures, in my opinion.
Corey, did that answer your second part of the question?
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. It did. Thank you guys.
Sure. I love this conversation. I do want to make time for Joshua in case he's running tight on time. Joshua, are you able to give us an update on what's going on over at CelsiusX?
Hey everybody, yeah, happy to. Yeah, I apologize. I'm actually not sure what to update. Caught me a little off guard there, Josh. I apologize. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what to say. You'll have to ask some more specific questions.
Just yeah, let's talk about CelsiusX, what it does. Again, a lot of people don't understand exactly how CelsiusX works and how it benefits Celsius users and how it benefits the company.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. So I think let's tackle the first part of the question. What is CelsiusX? So CelsiusX is a team. It's not a product. It's not a feature. It's a team. CelsiusX is a team of DeFi enthusiasts, particularly smart contract engineers and DeFi researchers. And what we do is we do a couple of things, but you can think of us sort of as the Skunkworks division of Celsius, or the R&D prototyping arm that builds kind of like moonshot projects. So that's what CelsiusX is. Now, with that being said, one of the first prototypes that we've launched recently is this concept of the wrap token platform and the cross-chain liquidity bridge. That's one of the features that I think users are familiar with. But in addition to that, we're building and working on about 6 or 7 other projects that we've not disclosed.
And then can you talk about how international users can utilize CelsiusX in its current form?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, CelsiusX is a team, right? CelsiusX is not a product, but the cross-chain liquidity bridge is one thing that users can use, one of the projects that we're working on in its current state. And the way that users can use it is if you are a non-US resident or in a non-US IP geo location, you can go to the Celsius web app, Celsius.network app, something like this. And essentially what it allows you to do is to send tokens outside of their native blockchains onto other blockchains. Currently, the tokens that we support are Ethereum, Cardano, and Dogecoin. And the blockchains that you can send them to currently are Polygon.
So meaning that I can take a Doge from the Doge chain, mint a Doge, CX Doge, which is just a wrapped Doge token, and then put that Doge coin on the Polygon chain to use it for market making or whatever is available for that Dogecoin, that wrapped Dogecoin.
That's correct. So in the context of Dogecoin, for those of us who are familiar with the token or maybe even hold it, Dogecoin or the Doge blockchain is not Turing complete, meaning the scripting that you can do on the Dogecoin blockchain is limited. And another word that we typically like to say in the industry is the Doge blockchain is not smart contract compatible. And so what that means is Dogecoin is great for basic transactions, basically sending and receiving Dogecoin to another person or from another person. However, those are about the only money verbs that you can do with Dogecoin in its current state in a non-Turing complete blockchain. However, if you, what the industry calls wrapping, if you wrap Dogecoin onto a Turing complete blockchain, let's say Polygon, you can actually now expand the number of money verbs that you can use Dogecoin for. So before you could only send and receive Dogecoin, but by putting it on a smart contract blockchain like Polygon, you can do many other money verbs like lend and borrow and lever and mint stable coins, engage in option protocols, and all these other very exciting and interesting money verbs that you can do now that the Dogecoin is on a Turing complete blockchain.
How is the adoption of these wrap tokens going? And then if you could touch on what's going on over at Cheetah with the Cell token as well.
Sure. So with regards to the adoption of the wrap tokens, so the bridge has been has been live now for approximately 2 months. Over the past 2 months, we've been seeing approximately $1 million per day in total volume across the bridge on a daily basis. So we've seen a little over $70 million worth of volume over the bridge so far. We initially started with Celsius seeded $1 million worth of these tokens into the Polygon ecosystem. So essentially about a 2x adoption since launch over the past 2 months.
That's awesome. And then if you could just touch on what's going on over at Cheetah.
Right. So for those of us who are familiar with the Polygon blockchain and the ecosystem there's a very popular protocol called Cheetah. What Cheetah is, it is something like MakerDAO, if you're familiar with MakerDAO on the Ethereum blockchain. And what Cheetah allows you to do is borrow against your assets. In this case, you can borrow against CX assets such as CX Ethereum, Doge, or Cardano. Or you could also borrow against other assets that they support. And what you borrow is stablecoins. In this case, the stablecoin that they have is called MAI. And you can collateralize and borrow against your assets and get these stablecoins at 0% interest. Of course, this is very attractive if you have a long-term conviction in the assets that you're borrowing against, and then now you have stablecoins that you can do all kinds of neat things with, like maybe you can use it to buy real-world goods, or you can use it to buy more crypto, or whatever it is that you like to do with these stablecoins. This is what Cheetah does. Recently, we also, because of our very strong relationship with the Cheetah team, in addition to whitelisting the CX tokens, they also listed the Celsius native asset, which is the Cell token, which is really, really great because this affords both Celsius and Celsius users, if they so choose, to be able to use their Cell tokens to borrow stablecoins against them. In fact, at a better interest rate than even Celsius offers. Celsius offers 1% loans, Cheetah offers 0%. So in a sense, we're competing with ourselves in this regard. But nonetheless, the idea here is Cheetah is a really great money Lego that enables more use cases for both Cell token and also for the CX assets.
Awesome. Thanks for that update, Josh. If you guys have any questions about what's going on over at the CelsiusX team, or maybe you're in the room and you are with another blockchain and would like for them to bridge, make sure you're reaching out to Josh, maybe DM him or come up on stage. Selkat, do you have any questions for Josh?
Yeah, I guess what I would ask is like a little bit more of a broad question, just to make it a little easier. So I've always thought of the Cell token as kind of like this black hole of finance when it comes to how we're disrupting the TradFi kind of regime, right? And I was wondering how maybe if there's any nuggets you could drop regarding Cell token and how we're looking on strengthening the power of that, maybe just how it's going to be potentially used. I've heard talks of potential governance. Is that something that is being considered?
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, this aspect of the black hole is like Cell token like absorbs the yield of other assets and then like redistributes it back through Cell token. Is that how I'm thinking? Am I thinking about that correctly?
Yeah, it's just like the flywheel in which, and I think it was incredible to see the way that the burn was added as well. It's like I kind of look at it from another perspective too, is like we had this world where the best you could get was, right, you had to go get this JP Morgan Reserve card, right? You had to be a millionaire to have any kind of utility in the TradFi world. And now you own Cell Token, and it's like instantly it opens you up to everything. And I was just kind of just asking kind of a broad question of like, maybe if there's any nuggets you could drop just in general.
Sure. I can share a little bit. So currently, Cell Token, as it is today, is by and large a platform token, and that means it's a token or utility. We call it, we back in 2017 we called these things utility tokens, which is like they have some function within the platform that they are connected to. In this case, Celsius, right? And as we know, the Cell Token has a couple of utilities, which is reduced interest on the loans that you take, bonus yield if you so choose to earn in Cell, and then future utilities as Celsius releases other products such as the credit card and swaps and things like this. So by and large, the Cell Token, it has been and continues to be and will continue to be, and moving forward into the future, a platform token and a utility token for the Celsius app. However, in true CelsiusX fashion, we like to so all the features and functions that Celsius will offer in the future, I think will be great for the Cell Token. This will bring Cell Token from its current state. Let's call it version 1, right? It'll bring it from version 1 to version 1.5 or something like this. And we'll continue to grow as the Celsius platform grows. But one thing that we're thinking at CelsiusX, which we're very much a DeFi enthusiast team, and an engineering and smart contract and research team. So we really like to push the boundaries of what we can do with this token, within, of course, the constraints of certain regulatory frameworks that we're bound by. And so, like, when thinking, when scoping out, like, well, what can we do with Cell Token and push the boundaries of it? Well, the first thing we look to is DeFi, and we look at all the interesting things that DeFi can do with tokens, and then we go back to the drawing board and say, well, how many of these can we implement with Cell Token, given given various constraints, given the circumstances of the regulatory restrictions I was mentioning earlier. And so we kind of pick and choose, like, well, can we do this? We have to ask regulatory, and they say yes, no, maybe. And so we kind of go down the list. And so with regards to Cell Token, you had mentioned this aspect of governance. So I think the term governance is a bit of it's a buzzword. When people say governance, like, they think of voting or something like this, which it is. But as we saw in 2019 and 2020, governance really doesn't have much weight if what you're voting for can be negated by the core devs, or if, like, what you're voting for doesn't really matter. So in other words, this aspect is, like, this concept of governance tokens really is really not that impactful unless what you're voting for truly has some impact on what you're voting for, and also that the vote is actually honored. So with regards to Cell Token, so we're thinking about it, right? So we're, like, thinking, well, how do we make Cell Token and this concept of governance work? And we've got a couple of, I think, really cool ideas, and it'll probably roll out in phases, and each phase will probably go through some level of regulatory review and things like this. But I can tell you that if you look at the governance landscape today, what governance model would you say that the industry is moving towards? Does anyone have a guess?
I think I think what it would be is, if, excuse me, if you're, if you're someone who's, passionate about, a platform or an idea, and you believe in kind of core fundamentals, and I think that those fundamentals should be, very much agreed upon beforehand, right? You don't want to reverse ship halfway through, but I think it's important that maybe when it comes to things that are important, when it comes to, like, for instance, I think a great thing that Alex has been doing lately is engaging people on Twitter and asking them about what they like, right? So even having just a simple way to cast your vote in that sense, I think is also something that is very much appreciated by the people that use that could use Celsius or Cell Token. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's valuable. Like using the Cell token as sort of a survey tool to get the sentiment of the customers. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if like so like back to my point in 2019 and 2020 concerning these governance tokens, like these kinds of things, in my personal opinion, they don't move the needle. I think they're great for like surveying, but I don't think they move the needle in terms of like impact. Not to mention like uh, because Celsius has a number of stakeholders as well. We have the community, we have our Cell token holders, we have non-Cell token holders, we have our investors, we have all kinds. We have so many different stakeholders, right? And deciding which stakeholders get to decide which decisions is really a difficult question to answer. Like, I mean, trying to get the same opinion out of 3 people is hard enough. Trying to get the same opinion out of 5 communities is even harder, right? So that is to say, I think governance has value. Um, I'm of the opinion though that only recently did we discover what type of governance has a significant needle moving impact on the utility of a governance token. And I'm curious if anyone like follows the DeFi space and like knows which kind of governance model I might be thinking of here.
Um, uh, so in the NFT world, we've decided to, use this period as like an avant-garde phase and try with different models. And there are certain DAOs out there, specifically like MakerDAO, that's been around for quite a while and seen just about everything, using different, tokens and voting, such as the ERC20 versus the ERC 721, and then having proposals put out by community members, and then the community members who own the tokens can go ahead and make a vote, and that's one way that we've gained traction. But I'm not sure if that's where you're going, Joshua. But I wanted just to touch on what Alex has been doing on Twitter and getting sentiment. I think it's very valuable, especially out of all of the platforms that I follow and I've seen. He's the only one who's out there actually caring about the community, what they're thinking and what they want. And he's, bootstrapping the type of grassroots thing that, he started with Celsius. What is it? Just a little over 5 years ago. So yeah, so for what it's worth, yeah, I I think we are kind of all coming to a consensus that the DAOs or the governance methodology is becoming a little bit more clear because it's been it's gone through many iterations. But yeah, in my opinion, you have like MakerDAO, you have Nouns DAO, you have the Bankless DAO, you have all these other things and all of these different protocols within them. But I'm curious to hear, Josh, what you think.
Yeah, Josh, now that you've sufficiently teased us all, why don't you hint at what you're speaking about?
Sure, and actually, I'd like to echo what Dope said. That there is value in surveying the sentiment and the opinions of. In fact, there's significant value in surveying the sentiment and the opinions of your customers, your community. And I agree with you that Alex does a stellar job at doing this on a regular basis, and I feel that more founders should actually be doing this. So with this in mind, so the way that we're thinking about the Cell token in the long term is this concept of vote escrow governance. And for those of us who are familiar with vote escrow, essentially you subscribe to some period of time where you can lock your tokens, anywhere between 3 months to 4 years, where you're unable to do anything with them except vote. And the longer that you lock your tokens, the more voting power that you have. So this means this incentivizes those that truly believe in the platform to lock for the longest time, and this aligns the interests. So if you really believe in something, you lock it for 4 years. You also happen to have the most voting power. And the pioneer of this model is a protocol called Curve, and Curve is arguably one of the most important DeFi protocols that is in the space today. And since pioneering the vote escrow model, many other protocols are now moving in this direction. Some big names are protocols like Balancer. A lot of the Terra ecosystem are moving to vote escrow. And many of the new protocols that are considering a governance model are moving to vote escrow as well. And the reason is because it just aligns the incentives of the protocol developers, the community, and the long-term success of the project. So now the question is, okay, so if Celsius thinks about doing a vote escrow model, right? So you lock your tokens for 4 years or whatever it is, and you're voting for things. Then the question becomes, well, what are you voting for? And certainly you can vote for these, market checks like Alex does, and I think that's valuable. But the scope of this restricts it only to the people that are in the Celsius ecosystem today. Is there a way that you can attract external players to participate in the governance? And that would be very, very interesting, right? So is there a way to incentivize people who that aren't in the ecosystem already to start voting? And this is something that Curve has figured out, and it's through vote escrow. And in the context of Curve, millions and millions of dollars are being purchased of Curve to vote for what are called gauges. And without going into too much detail of what gauges are, they essentially direct the incentive rewards of these Curve emissions to various pools. And if you have the most Curve, you get to direct the most incentives. And essentially, Curve becomes a kingmaker for various pools. Do Kwon is most famous for purchasing something like $100 million worth of Curve, along with Rax and some other protocols. And so in the context of Celsius, well, what would an external player want from Celsius such that if they had the voting power to choose to move Celsius his hand to do, well, then that is what is the value proposition of vote escrow for Celsius. So in other words, suppose you wanted Celsius to do something for you, and you were, let's say, a protocol. What is the one thing? What is the biggest thing that Celsius could do for you? And I'll let you stew on that question. Like, if you were a protocol and you were engaging with Celsius, and you know what Celsius does, and if you had an opportunity to move Celsius's hand by voting for voting for your protocol, what is it that you would want Celsius to do? And this is what we're thinking about in our vote escrow model.
Cellcat, do you have a question on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's so much information. I'm looking at Curve right now and just trying to learn, just trying to pick up on what you're kind of hinting at here. And I also wanted to just ask about interoperability, if that is going to be a core focus of Cell Token, because I think that that is going to be very much needed in the future when we have mass adoption. And I think that the Celsius services of things being, feeless, and the yield opportunities. You guys were talking about staking opportunities, and there's, I think that that's really powerful if you implement something like kind of like what you're doing now with the different chains. But maybe just if you could speak on how Cell Token will function in an interoperable space, how it would benefit from interoperability.
Before he does that, Cellcat, do you have a guess at what his original question was? What protocols would want Celsius to do for them, and why they would want to do that voting?
I think that there's a lot of different. I think there's a lot of different DeFi projects out there that could use Celsius's services. So I'm trying to nail it in my head. I'm not a genius like you guys over here. I'm just I think it could have to do with certain deployment of assets, or there's many different ways you can go with that kind of thing. So no, I don't think I have I don't know. Sorry.
Joshua, did you want to answer it?
No. I think I'd much rather just as we typically do, I think, in CelsiusX fashion, right? Is like when it's there,
Yeah.
it'll be there.
No, I think, Josh, you've given us exactly the right amount of information tonight. I appreciate that.
Can I just ask what the timeline might look like for us to see an initial kind of deployment on what Josh was just talking about?
Yeah, so we'll probably roll out an early prototype of this kind of thing as soon as we get a regulatory go-ahead. Yeah, so this will be rolled out in phases from easiest to implement and fastest to implement to more complicated models, which will probably be the end state of the VE model I was mentioning earlier. But the earlier sort of prototypes will probably be something much easier to implement. It wouldn't be in the VE model to start. So as far as timeline, yeah. How about just keep your eyes peeled? I can't say. Actually, I can't say because I don't know how fast our legal team can review this kind of thing.
Is it possible we could be voting on these kinds of CX assets and the way that Cell becomes interoperable amongst different chains?
No, that's not. I wouldn't say that's currently in scope.
Selka, did you want to re-ask your question real quick on interoperability? And then we can move on. I think Dopeness might have had a question while he was up here too.
Yeah, I was just wondering how Cell Token can play kind of a central role and kind of gain from its spot in being this interoperable token as it's already kind of becoming.
I'm sorry, is that a question for CelsiusX or for Celsius?
Yeah, like are we thinking about I know we're all about feelessness and all that kind of stuff. Are we considering just different strategies to kind of, I don't know. You- This is this is difficult. I'm just trying to ask about like what is what could Cell Token kind of bring to the table when it comes to interoperability, right? Like I think a lot of people come into the space, they buy Bitcoin and then they go and buy everything else, right? And so I look at this as, wouldn't it be cool if you came into the space, you bought Cell Token, and then it opened up a world of interoperability? What do you think about that?
Um, I'm not quite sure if I understand like uh, the idea you're trying to present. Um, like I understand all of the words that you're saying. Like I know what interoperability means, but I'm not sure I follow like your
So like
question.
the like the feelessness is a feature of Celsius, and when you're trying to move, if we're going to use Cell Token throughout the DeFi space, like we've tried, like we've been doing, right? And there's all these different opportunities. I'm just trying to basically get a gauge of like what is the cell is Cell Token going to be like this interoperable token, and how does that how does it gain from being interoperable?
So yeah, I don't I apologize. I don't fully capture what you're trying to ask. Maybe it's maybe we're thinking in different terms, but one thing I can tell you is that from CelsiusX side, right, going back to DeFi, what you can expect is that we're going to do our best, again within the regulatory constraints that we're bound by, to integrate Cell Token into all of the various DeFi partnerships that we forge. So at a minimum, that essentially looks like getting Cell Token listed on the various platforms that we are partnering with. And if we're partnering on different protocols on different blockchains, then you could say that Cell Token is interoperable in the sense that it's being utilized on different blockchains. But yeah, if I understood your question better, I think I could give a better answer. But I apologize, I don't I don't really understand.
Josh, I think you're given just the right amount of information, but still keeping it classy, so we're not letting things out too soon or putting out the wrong impression. But I think this whole conversation of the last 30 minutes is an example of the amount of time, energy, and brain power that is going into Cell Token and its development and its usefulness on Celsius and all of Celsius's products. So, we can't go into all the details, but I can say without a doubt that the tide has turned with the amount of energy that's going into Cell Token and Cell Token development.
I just do want to say thank you real quick for answering all my questions.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming up, Cellcat. Dopeness, while you're up here, you've been waiting a long time. Did you have any other questions while you're up here?
Yeah, I was just wondering how's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? Hopefully everybody's, having a good time. I heard Miami was quite the spectacle down there. Even though a lot of the traditional finance guys were Grayscale and Michael Saylor, they were all talking about ETFs and growing the ecosystem of cryptocurrencies and stuff. Just checking in on you guys. I haven't spoken to you guys in a while. Hopefully you guys are all good and had fun while you were down there.
Yeah, it's like we came in so much stronger this year than we did last year. Our booth was fantastic. We had a ton of open space and we're able to accommodate talking with dozens of people at a time. We had tons of team to support that. So we never had people just standing by waiting. They were always getting addressed right away. and then we had all kinds of different parts of the company that could address all the other connections we're making down there, from customer care to business development and partnerships and mining and all the parts of our business. So that was fantastic. And then the community event was an absolute blowout. We were very happily surprised with the 1,000+ people that showed up and showed their support and asked the questions and met us, and that was really, really awesome. So I was joking with Alex that we need to start hosting our own events that are going to be the Celsius conference, sponsored by BlockFi, or sponsored by Bitcoin, Ethereum, and everyone else.
Nice one.
Awesome. And just I wanted to touch on just two things you guys said earlier about inflation. I think it's just very important. Both, I think you guys said that you watched the video of Michael Saylor over the weekend, which was incredible. Just two other things I just wanted to throw out there to the ethos, to everybody. The Fed is, again, not financial advice, not an economist by any way, shape, or form, but I have been in traditional finance for quite a while. The PIMCO, one of the largest fixed income players in the space, they've now for a few months said that they're getting into DeFi, and just to put it into some kind of terms conceptually, they manage a little over $2 trillion in fixed income, and they see DeFi as not something that they want to play in, but a definite a solution to a lot of the double accounting that they do and things like that. So they are increasing allocating the amount of funds that they're putting into the space. So that's one thing I just wanted to add as a data point. And the second thing is the Fed, Bullard, he's the president over at St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. He actually said that at the end of the year, he wants interest rates up to 3.5%. And, that would be because he wants to combat 40-year high inflation readings. So that sort of, data point is, again, something where, the US dollar is going to have a huge headwind going forward. And, Bitcoin being the blue chip of cryptocurrencies is going to benefit from, dare I say, flight to safety for people who look to shield themselves from, from the inevitable. But yeah, sorry, I don't want to bore you guys too much, but I just want to put that out there.
Again, every time the Fed or Fed members say something, how seriously can you take it?
Don't believe them.
It's like they will say we've had how many recessions in the past 110 years, and they've never called any of them. The Great Depression, they never called that, and our currency over the oversight of the Fed has lost 99+% of its value. So how could I ever trust an institution like that that's destroying wealth at that pace? It doesn't make sense to me.
And recessions are the way that the Fed has it. Every 8 to 10 years, the way they rig it is when it's supposed to happen. And if you look back over time, it happens every 8 to 10 years. It's always consistent. Maybe it goes to 12, but the system crashes every 8 to 10 years. Then they rebuy assets when they're down, and then resell them when the market recovers.
Oh, we're breaking that mold now. I don't know what's going to happen. In the 70s, they had to double the rate of inflation in order to cool it down as far as interest rates go. I don't see that happening here, and we're going up at a pretty good clip. We're going to be probably at double-digit inflation in the next 6 months, and that's when the real magic happens.
And it's interesting. 40-year high inflation, 40% of the U.S. money supply, they printed in the last 18 months. And, used cars are up 40%. It just makes you shake your head.
Yeah, let's not act like the actual inflation is 8.5%, because it's definitely not. And if we measured it the same way they measured it in the 70s and 80s, it would be north of 15%. So, the other thing that they're liable to do is change the calculation method. And they do this in subtle ways, and sometimes they do it in drastic ways. So the methodology can always be changed. If you actually look at what goes into CPI, it's an unbelievably complex calculation of different products and services and weights of those prices. And a good example is like they'll take red meat, for example, and say, the price of ribeye steaks has gone up dramatically, so we're just going to substitute ground beef for ribeye steaks. And it's red meat is red meat, and of course that's not the case, right? One is much of a much higher quality than the other, but they will play with those kind of prices and weights in order to justify a lower print on the inflation numbers, when if it was an honest and true statistic, it would be much higher. I look at like the Chapwood index as a much more accurate, real price increase measure. And then inflation itself, I always stick with the definition of the expansion of the money supply. Inflation, prices don't inflate, the money supply inflates. And so if you look at that, then you're looking at 15-20% year over year increase of the money supply. And if you go to Fred.com and look at the numbers from the Federal Reserve itself, you can see the money supply is going up and to the right at a very dramatic rate. So I just can't imagine that the printing of money is going to stop anytime soon.
It's definitely not, because bond yields are on the rise again, and they're going to have to start repurchasing those to get those yields to drop. So they're in the ultimate whack-a-mole situation.
It sounds like it's a time for a brand new monetary system.
I agree.
Most things, B, if you will.
Most things these guys do, if you look at it, everything is just a lie. Here's a perfect example. Why do you call yourself the Federal Reserve? Seriously. What?
You're not federal,
you're a private
and you have no
company.
reserves.
You have nothing to do with the U.S. federal government. You have no reserves. Why do you call yourself the Federal Reserve?
I think it's the same reason why they call legislation like the Protect Children and Puppies Act, and it does the exact opposite. It's like a total game.
Same thing with central banks in, let's just say, Bangladesh. The the Bank of Bangladesh. Bangladesh doesn't own that central bank. Why do you, it's just everywhere you turn, this organization misleads. So when you know the St. Louis Fed comes out and says this, yeah, I'll listen, but I'll listen with a grain of salt because I don't trust people that lie to me and that are criminals.
Well, it all goes back to as well the FDIC. You walk in your bank and you see it everywhere. You feel warm and fuzzy thinking all your money is insured. And if
It's
2,
not.
3, 4 banks were to draw on that, they couldn't pay it. So,
Fuck
yeah.
3, 4 banks. One Chase Bank in New York City. One branch.
Yeah. What do they have? Like $65 billion in reserves, and have never
That's a
paid out a
joke.
penny.
Guys, if you're just joining us, please share the room out. Let everyone know that we're live. If you want to join us up here on stage, just tap on the mic in the bottom left. Obviously, we're all about talking about inflation today, but also we're here to answer any questions related to Celsius. Feel free to come up if you have any feedback for us as well. Miss Teen Crypto, welcome in. What's up?
What's up, Josh, Scott, Zach? How's it going?
Good. It was great to meet you in person down in Miami.
It was great to meet you too. Like, really love this whole Celsius vibe. You guys had a great booth and great swag.
Yeah, it was really nice meeting you as well, Miss Teen Crypto. Yeah, I'm a big fan as well. I think you're doing good work out there.
Thank you. I'm totally vibing with you guys. Like, this is a great room so far, and like some really great points have been made. Especially like, seeing inflation right now, it's absolutely insane. I don't know about you guys, but I go to the grocery store and I see things that are the same price, yet they're half the size and the quality isn't there anymore. So I'm like seeing a lot of shrinkflation. I don't know if you guys have been seeing that lately.
Yeah, that's another one of those points made by Michael Saylor, is that companies, as the quality of money degrades, companies will try to save money in more and more like unnoticeable ways by cutting the size of products, by changing the packaging to make it look bigger, and then also reducing the quality of ingredients so that you're getting a less quality product, even if it's the same amount. And those are all just knockoff effects of this fiat system.
Yeah, I was actually talking about that on my show. For everyone who doesn't know, I actually have a podcast that goes live 1 to 2 times a week on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, it's youtube.com/MissTeenCrypto. I had Dennis Porter on last Friday. We were talking about this as well. Just, it kind of backs people into a corner where they have to lower the quality or the size just to keep up with what's going on, because it's just getting so expensive to just create products, never mind just the risk of not having the same amount of income as before.
That's exactly right. I was just, I want to say it was Mark Moss I was watching, where they were talking about real estate and how no one builds starter homes anymore because it's just plain old not profitable. Everything's so expensive, the cost of lumber and the cost of paying contractors and stuff, that no one does it. They build all mid-level and luxury houses now.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I read about that happening specifically in California, is that they don't build houses in California less than 650,000 because there's just no money in it between the cost of materials, the cost of licensing, the cost of potential lawsuits, all of this stuff. It hurts the little guy the most because they say, okay, well, we'll just make, really expensive houses that we can pull a high profit margin on, and then nobody can afford those houses. So something in like LA, where they would need tiny houses, something that's super super cheap that could house a ton of people or help with the homeless problem. This goes exactly the opposite of that and only creates super expensive housing that not a lot of people can afford.
Exactly. And like what I've been thinking about, I was actually talking about this with my dad too, is just, as a young person, right? Like, especially if someone's coming out of college or something like that, it's really difficult to start your life. And, the wages are the same, yet the inflation keeps going up. So people are still making the same amount of money, but their dollar, like their purchasing power, just doesn't go as far. So like we're talking about getting houses, right? Like, how would a young person even get that far to buy a house these days? Like, you just
Not
can't keep
possible.
up.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to. And also keep in mind, for this scam to work, by the Federal Reserve, you cannot get a raise. If you get a raise, then the scam doesn't work. Because if you get a raise, then they can't steal from you anymore. So notice how everyone in this room knows how difficult it is to get a raise from your boss. The reason is, if your boss gives you a raise, then the Federal Reserve can't steal from you anymore. So it's very, very difficult to get a raise. So inflation hits you, wages stay the same, and then they your money just disappears. It's the worst tax. It's I refer to it in most people as a silent tax. In my opinion, it's worse than income tax because you
I
don't see it;
yeah.
it just hits you.
Yeah, I have some friends that they're in their early 30s and they're looking to buy a house, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're trying to save money to buy a house," and they're not big into financial education. But I said, guys, listen, that's going to be a near impossible task, because the value of your savings is going to decrease at the same time that the value of the houses and your required down payment are going to increase. And you're not going to be able to save fast enough to ever have a down payment. They wanted to do a 20% down payment, and I said, in the way that things are, it's going to be nearly impossible for you to do that. So, they really didn't even consider that. They thought they could just save for a house, and unless you're making a ton of money, it's really not possible for the average person to do that. They're forced into like 3% FHA loans, and just have barely any money down, or they're just going to, rent for their entire lives.
Absolutely insane. It Because I just think about it all the time. Just how are people going to keep up? even like groceries, right? Like I know like inflation's pegged at what 8 point something% right now, right? Or whatever it is. I know it's about 8%,
Yeah,
but
you're right. Yep, 8.5.
yes, 8.5. And I don't know, just like I know it depends on certain things and whatnot, but I don't know, the things in the grocery store are double. So it's like bacon used to be $2.99, now it's like $12.99. So that's like what, a 4x?
In the
Yeah,
Not many people
CPI,
keep up.
in the CPI data, they actually cut a lot of food and energy out. Like we don't need those things at all, right?
right. You got to remember that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is a very very doctored and selected set of prices, and you cannot take that for honesty. And they'll say, don't believe your lying eyes. You see the price of bacon triple or quadruple. Inflation is only 8%. Housing. Oh, housing's up. The inflation in housing is only 10%, but houses are up 25, 30, 40%. So, always take those government statistics with a huge pile of salt.
Huge pile of something. Steven, you've been up here for a while. Did you have a question?
Well, I have been up here for a while. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well.
I'm actually sitting in a restaurant in a small town in Mexico. My wife is looking at me, trying to figure out when I'm going to get off this call. So I'm going to say my 2 sentences and rejoin this conversation if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay, so first of all, I agree with Zach that Michael Saylor interview, amazing. Can't get enough. Just can't get enough of that. I don't know. I've been reading like the Bitcoin Standard, and I've been reading Thank God for Bitcoin, which are 2 books really spell out the whole fiat government from time, from the beginning of time to the present, and how it's just been one continual giant Ponzi scheme ripoff of the government just stealing blind the general public. Now I'm going to end with this point, and I don't know if it's feasible or not. I'll leave that with Zach and who knows, maybe Alex. I think some of the Fed board members, they're all accredited investors. So why don't they take out these huge Celsius loans and pay down the national debt? Win-win.
If only there were enough loans to take.
I agree.
I don't know if even Celsius can cover those. They're like humongous. But anyway, I just wanted to say good evening to you all. And it's also interesting what our teen co-host just said. It's a sad situation that the average age of the homeless people in America are actually going up. They're starting to see people in their 50s for the first time being homeless because they can't keep up with their payments, or maybe they lost a breadwinner in the home, and it's just like snowballing out of control. Of course, mostly in the big cities. And it's a funny point. We talked about that this morning. I'm down here in Mexico on a long vacation. I've seen 3 homeless people in 2 months, and yet everybody from here is trying to go north. And down here, there are many expats coming down here for the reason of getting away from all of that inflation in the north. So I don't know what's going to happen. Pretty soon the balloon, the more you blow it up, it reaches a popping point, and then it's just going to blow. So everybody stay safe.
Well, thanks for joining us, Steve, and thanks for your comments. We appreciate them. And get back to having dinner with your wife.
Okay, I will do. I hope she still will forgive me. Have a good one, guys.
She will. All right, have a good one. Aziz, I saw you unmute. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think with homelessness and inflation, I think those 2 things kind of go hand in hand. And to understand inflation, you have to understand that it's going to affect people with the least amount of money the most. So CPI isn't the best indicator of inflation because it takes into a lot of different factors, like used cars. But not everyone's buying used cars every single week. Most people, at least in the US, are spending the majority of their money on groceries, rent, and energy.
Yeah,
so
energy.
Those 3 things, if they're going up 25%, then your personal inflation, because inflation is kind of a personal thing, it's going up way more than 8%. And that obviously is going to affect a lot of Americans if income inequality is an issue and a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and you'll see progressively more homeless people and increasing amount of struggling for people that are at the bottom of the monetary chain that we have in this country. So I think you're going to see only more of that as inflation increases.
And it's going to happen very soon here. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if they go back to handing out stimulus checks to everyone, although that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy too. So it's really hard to see what their next moves are going to be because all of them are horrible.
Yeah, I think that California, and I don't know if they executed on this or not, but they were talking about giving people $400 per vehicle to help pay for gas. And you want to talk about like the stupidest thing ever, that it just increases the demand for gasoline, which is already extremely high in California because they have excess taxes and they require a special blend in California only. So it's like, that it reaffirms my opinion that politicians will always do the easiest and most convenient thing, and that tends to be more harmful long term than short term. And so that's why I don't think the right decisions will be made now to have the pain now, but make things better down the road. It'll always get cooked or kicked down the road until it's an absolute emergency, and then eventually the fiat has to collapse. Like I just can't believe this is, when you look at that long time horizon of 100 years, it makes it so clear that this paper money is just not worth anything anymore because it's being printed out of existence.
Yeah, this is all just a quick fix. You look at the stimulus checks, they're just giving a little bit at a time to keep people from catching on and learning about what's really going on. And everyone's being distracted. They're being distracted by the little bit they get. They're like, oh, great, the government's taking care of me. Oh, great, but they have no idea what's coming. So, yeah, it's all about education.
Yeah, something else that was shocking, and I think it was something that Otis posted, was like if you took all of the countries or the major countries' inflation rates, and this is when inflation was 7.9 last CPI. The United States is only like 4 or 5 spots from some of the highest inflation, 50% plus per year. So it's not like we're very close to hitting that tipping point where it could get really out of control really, really quickly. It's like it's slowly and suddenly kind of thing.
And once it gets out of control and gets hyperinflation, you can't control it. It's not like you can put it back in the bag. Take a look at Venezuela. Venezuela. One thing I wanted to add is, how banks grant loans. Not a lot of people know that when a bank gives you a loan, they have no money to lend you. It is when you sign that mortgage or student loan or car loan, that's when the money is created, because without loans, there's no new money. We live in what's called a debt-based monetary system. And what's really egregious about, people losing their home and going homeless is the bank didn't lend you any money in the first place. You created the money, you put down a 20%. The bank created the money, times it by 10. Now it's unlimited. They times it by however much. And if you default on paying your mortgage, they take your home. But they didn't put one penny towards your home and put you on the street. And, that's what's most egregious. And then you hear politicians saying we have a homeless problem. Motherfucker, you know why we have a homeless problem. You know how the system works. So, I find that very, very troubling.
Yeah, I asked my mom that, who was actually in the real estate business on the title insurance side. And I said, Mom, when someone goes and buys a house, right, and they get a mortgage, where do you think the money comes from? And she said, oh, the bank has an account
Most
that
people don't know. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
that they pull money from, and then the bank is lending you the money. And I said that's absolutely not the case. And this is
Impossible.
a woman that's been in this industry for the 30 years, and it says no, that money is created through the loan at the time you sign, and that mortgage right there is the creation of money, and it creates a debt, which is the mortgage, and it creates an asset and a liability. The asset is the mortgage, which is what you owe, and then the liability is the fiat that they create. And then when you pay off that mortgage, it cancels the debt and liability plus interest, right? And then you have to ask, wait, if you created $500,000, but you have to pay back $1 million because the interest over 30 years, where does that $1 million, or where's that other $500,000 come from? And it comes from other loans. And so that's when you realize that the loans have to continue to grow, and the money supply has to continue to grow, or else it would collapse, paying off all the debt. And
No
this is
more,
stuff,
no new loans. The system collapses. Very
right?
simple.
And
Yeah.
so Mike Maloney used to talk about this stuff, and there were other people, but it never really became clear until I understood Bitcoin and I understood banking from people like, I think, George Gammon. It was the one that really clarified it for me. So yeah, that loan creation, when you create a loan, you're creating money, and then you have to pay that off plus interest. And that's why it's a big Ponzi, because if you just created all the money right there, then how do you get that money plus interest?
It is mind-boggling, when you sit down and you think about it. And on top of it, now you have the Federal Reserve that'll just get up and print 48 trillion out of thin air to rescue Deutsche Bank, because Deutsche Bank was going under in 2019, during the repo markets. I mean, that's just insane. That's an insane amount of money. $48 trillion. You just print it out of thin air.
Reagan, you've been up here for a while. Did you have a question or an opinion?
Hey, Josh, thanks. Yeah, a couple of things, not really on the inflation stuff though. I was just wondering, with the changes to the non-accredited investors in the US and Celsius, I was wondering if that's, in broad terms, is sort of going to change your marketing strategy or your dynamics sort of going forward. Maybe if you could have just a little bit of a bit of a chat about that at all.
Yeah, I think it will have an effect. I haven't heard exactly the changes that may be made, but it does restrict our ability to add new non-accredited users' assets to our earn product, which is one of the key features we have. And we're still going to have many other products that they can participate in, but it will slow down growth, I think, in that area. And I think we're considering how we should adapt our marketing to the new regulatory environment.
Do you think that's cool? Do you think that'll maybe make getting the on and off ramps for US sort of more of a priority to open up that to that access? Or?
I think it's been a priority for a while, and again, it's just been very difficult because of the licensure requirements in each area. California was supposed to go live today, but there were a few bugs, so they're going to try to get that out as soon as they can. But it's going to be a state-by-state battle, and we're just going to have to keep doing that one at a time. And it's not only getting those licenses, but it's also maintaining them, which is a huge amount of work. So, it's not easy to get it, and it's not easy to maintain them. But we're doing it the right way so that we can, again, continue this business for the next 100 years and service billions of people legally and as done as regulators ask.
Awesome. I'll ask, if it's all right, 2 more quick ones. Is that cool?
Yep, go for it, Reagan.
Cheers. First one was, I noticed the liquidity on Quickswap it's dropped by like 50% since Cell token was accepted into the cheat out protocol. I was just wondering if there's any insights as to where that liquidity might have gone. I don't know if you have insights to that, or if that's one for Josh or something like that. But I was just curious. Or does losing that much liquidity have any impact on what's been done so far?
I think that would be a Josh question. I haven't been keeping an eye on that. Josh, have you seen the liquidity there and any idea what may be going on?
Yeah, I've been watching that market as well, Reagan. I haven't watched if the liquidity is due a liquidity outflow or because of TVL drop. Have you been monitoring like in kind as well, or just the dollarized?
Just the dollarized, yeah. I haven't looked into it too much myself, but I just noticed it was quite a big drop. So
Yeah, then I mean, if it was the dollarized, then I mean, it would make sense that the dollarized TVL went down, right? But I don't know if the like absolute in token kind has dropped as well.
yeah, okay, yeah, fair point. That'd be interesting to to have a look in a little bit more. I did have one, but it's completely gone, so I'll pop up if I remember. But thanks, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, but you asked a second part to that question, which is like if this will affect any of the things that we're trying to do, and the answer is not really. The more liquidity, the better, certainly. Like this activates more and more money Legos, but like the amount of liquidity that's there now is sufficient for like activating like the first stage of money Legos.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Cheers.
Yep. Thanks for coming up, Reagan. BTC Million, what's up?
Hey, Josh, Zach. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. What's going on?
Nice, interesting discussions on inflation. Personally, I got hit with an insurance renewal that went up 50%. 8.8% CPI is a joke for sure. Anyways, can I ask a question about swaps?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Been a customer since 2020. So far, loving Celsius. Just bummed out that I haven't received the swaps yet. I just want to know what the process of activating is, because my neighbors have it, so state is not an issue. They are not platinum, so platinum is not an issue. So what is the issue and what is the process? And I've made several requests over the past 2 months. Just getting response that, hey, we'll put you on the list. Soon you'll get it. Soon you'll get it, but never got it yet. So is it something relevant to my case or in general? And who can give me a right answer?
Yeah, I can't say with 100% certainty, but the only thing that would come to my mind is if your KYC is updated and correct, the document you signed up with is still valid, or if you need to update that. Besides that, if you're in an area that is accepted, it's I know that it's not out to all users in all areas yet. And they're trying to roll that out as quickly as they can. But I appreciate your patience and being, we understand that everybody wants to get access to swaps, and it's really a fantastic product. But Celsius is rolling this out very methodically, and so far we haven't had any technical issues.
But I mean, if you're talking about KYC issues, nothing has changed since I signed up. So I do not know they're not responding to me that there is an issue with KYC or anything like that. So
yeah, do you remember if the license or passport that you signed up with, if that is still valid?
Yeah, it's still valid. I still hold the same thing. Everything is valid. I mean, I haven't changed anything. Nothing has changed.
I'm not. Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I know it hasn't been rolled out to all users yet, and it may be something that you just have to hang tight until they activate your account. I know that's frustrating, but I think that's where it's at.
Are you able to DM me and probably look at my case specifically?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you able to DM me and get some of my details and look into my case specifically if there is anything? Are you able to help?
I can ask. There's no priority line right now or like special access, but I can ask to see why maybe your account hasn't been activated and see if maybe there's something in the background that that the others haven't seen.
That'll be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming up on stage. Did you have any other questions, Bitcoin Million?
I'm good for now. I'll continue listening, and I'll come up if I have any more questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah.
M. Riddle, what's going on?
Nothing much. Just wanted to clarify on the banking side, how the loans are created. So the bank actually backs it with the deposits that we keep in the checking and savings account. So today they have enough deposits. They have like 10 trillion deposits, and the loans are 8 trillion. So it's not created out of thin air, as you might be thinking. What happens is that whatever money we are depositing, that is lent out. That fractional reserve that they teach in school and colleges is not happening in reality. It's all BS. So that's very important to know how the loan system works. And the reason the banks fail is when a percentage of those loans go bad, the capital of the bank, their capital is very limited. They're not putting their trillions of dollars. They have hardly 10 billion or 50 billion maximum capital. So if any of the 50 billion goes bad, they are basically bankrupt. They have to take the hit. So that's what happened in the 2008 crisis. I was working for a bank, and I know personally, I went into the rabbit hole to figure that out. So the point is that it is our hard-earned money that is deposited in the bank, and they are making the spread out of it. They are lending it out at risky investments, and they make the money out of it. So they are not putting their capital at risk. It is our money which is at risk, and that's how it works.
That's contrary to everything I've learned, and I guess I would ask one question. Where is all the new money coming from then, if it's not coming from commercial banks?
When you say new money, what new money are you talking about?
When I look at the M2 money supply, it's gone parabolic over the last 100 years, right? That is new money that's entering the system. Where is that money coming from?
That is just that bookkeeping that we do, that you get interest on that keeps on compounding. I can understand when you say the Fed is creating money. Yes, absolutely. They are doing a bookkeeping where they don't have the capital. By the way, the Fed is bankrupt. They don't even have a capital of $50 billion. If you look at it, they are worse than even Lehman Brothers. So they create money out of thin air, and they buy those securities from the market. So in this pandemic, they just issued, right, 5 trillion they bought from the market. They did not have 5 trillion. They just do a bookkeeping entry where they increase the reserve balance of the banks, and the banks buy the securities in the market and sell it to the Fed. And in return, they get a capital gain out of that. They make a money on the spread. They also get, interest from the Fed for just lending those securities to the Fed in the repo market. So they are making money left, right, center. So yes, I agree if you say that the Fed is creating out of thin air, absolutely. But the banks don't create the money out of thin air. They are actually risking our deposits. In fact, I was on the CNBC call today with the Bank of America CEO, and he said we have 2 trillion more in deposits. That was the stimulus money given by the government. So the way it worked out is the Treasury borrowed the 2 trillion or the 4 trillion from the Fed, and there is, by the way, a special Treasury account now. They moved the Treasury account from the commercial banks directly with the Fed, and the reason they did that is that if they keep that account with the commercial bank, there will be too much deposit money in the commercial system, and those all the ratios that the banks have to comply with, it won't work. So they moved the account from the commercial banks, and you'll see that when they started borrowing the money, there was a huge spike in the Treasury account, and now it is back to the normal because they have spent pretty much 90% of that money, so it's no longer there. So only when the Fed is buying, doing the quantitative easing, it's really creating money out of thin air. Other than that, it's all our money at risk in the banking system.
I'll just say this. Show me that on paper. I don't want to hear it. Show me that on paper. So in other words, what you're saying is when a bank grants a loan, it doesn't, money is not created during that loan process, correct?
I think
Yeah,
there's
money
a
is not. You
there's
can
a
call it that it is a bookkeeping entry. They start as an asset, but the funds are moved from an
All I'm
account where there is a deposit money
just a
of the
simple question.
deposit.
All I'm saying is when a bank grants a loan, for instance, a car loan,
Hmm.
the bank doesn't create money in that instance, correct? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
No money is created. All of it belongs to the bank, but it lends.
Yes.
All of that money is ours.
Yes.
You would have to show me that for me to believe it. Coming
I
from a
can
bank.
show you.
I'm sorry.
I went into that. By the way, I was working for one of these large banks that time, and I saw it dying. Okay, I used to work with the CFO team, and I went deep into this rabbit hole to figure this out. I read pretty much the top books on the crisis, so I know what I'm talking about. So, and I
Okay.
keep tracking what the Fed is doing, what the QE is going on, what's happening with the 10-year Treasury rate, what's happening with the mortgage rates. So I keep a lot of track of a lot of things. So I just wanted to share so that people have more clarity. And most of the guys I know who are studying in the Harvard economics, they are just doing the bookish knowledge. They don't know the practical part, how the banks operate. Unless you work for a bank, you don't know how they operate.
I think
In
even the
any
people
case,
that work for a bank don't know how the banks operate.
Yeah.
With all due respect.
In any case, even if it's the commercial banks that are creating money out of thin air or the Fed that's creating money out of thin air, money is still being created out of thin air at a disastrous rate.
Let me ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of the commercial banks own the Fed?
No. Fed is a private entity, by the way. It's a banker
Yes.
to the government.
Can you tell us who the owners are?
It is split across a lot of the commercial banks and the federal banks in the various regions.
I think
I
that
just asked you if
there's
any of the commercial banks own the Fed, and you said no.
M. Riddle.
No.
I think that there's a gap in what you're saying here, because I think a lot of pension funds buy the mortgages off of the bank's balance sheet, which makes it appear like they're at a better ratio than they would be otherwise.
But
No,
the
so
Fed is
that is
buying those
correct,
mortgages
Josh.
too.
Josh, that is correct. They repackage it, they offload from their book so that they can keep on creating more loans. But the total number of loans on their balance sheet cannot exceed the deposits they have with them.
Yeah, so I can jump in on that. I used to work for a mortgage company too, for about 4 years. And what'll happen when you originate a mortgage is the bank will originate that mortgage. They'll give you the money up front, but that will be paid for and offloaded in the secondary mortgage market from at the latest within a week. But the turnaround time is closer to like 24 hours. So yes, the bank has a little bit of money, but they're almost instantly sending that money or getting repaid on everything that they gave you by Ginnie Mae, Fannie, Freddie, whatever type of mortgage it
Freddie Mac.
is. It depends on the type of mortgage. So like Ginnie is, I think, USDA loans. The VA is also handled by Ginnie, and then conventional loans are Fannie and Freddie. So, but that's essentially how the system's going to work: is you're going to pay for or you're going to get a mortgage. They're going to give you the money up front, and they're going to be paid back for it immediately, and then some by one of those three companies, essentially.
What happens if all Americans just stop taking loans, car loans, student loans, mortgages? What happens to the system?
The entire system is built off the housing industry. So like all of our purchasing that we do essentially in this country is built off the idea that we're purchasing things for a house, for like all of our consumer goods, and then like electricity, rent, food, it's all going into a house, right? So homelessness is obviously a huge issue. If the system fails and you have an entire society that's built off debt and people repaying that debt, and then you have a Federal Reserve that's relying on people repaying that debt, the system crashes. So let's hope that doesn't happen, I guess.
Quick question. Are you saying that the commercial banks do create money through that formula, even though they put up the money first, but then gets repaid 24 hours, or are you saying the opposite?
I'm saying they have the money to give you immediately, but they don't have to carry much because they only have to carry enough money to handle a day's worth of loans, plus some reserves. They don't have to hold all the money that they gave out the past month of loans. They definitely don't have that in the balance sheet. They're getting repaid on that almost instantly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emradil, thanks for coming up. That was a really good topic. Do you have any other questions or comments?
No, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks again. Allison, I believe you were up next.
Hi. I was just wondering if you think the inflation that we're seeing right now is going to maybe drive Bitcoin adoption sooner than we would have expected, and like a decoupling from the NASDAQ. I think we're kind of starting to see just how strong Bitcoin can be as an asset class and like a reserve currency. And we're seeing really low inventories on exchanges. And just, what do you think the price action is going to be in the next few months? Or
Well, it's impossible to know in the short term, but I think over the last like 6 months, we've had so many political things happen to make Bitcoin relevant to the Western world that it's undeniable how important it is. So what we saw in Canada, what we're seeing in Russia and Ukraine, what we're seeing in Europe and the US around inflation, monetary policy. There was an argument up until maybe 2020 that the Western world doesn't need a remittance system and it doesn't really need a digital currency because the dollar is not perfect, but it works well enough. But now we're seeing the dollar being sanctioned in Russia and being weaponized in that way, and then blocking payments in Canada, and then wild inflation in the US. I think it's becoming extremely relevant to people now, and they're going to learn very quickly what happens when prices go up and the value of that money goes down, and they're going to be looking for an alternative. And Bitcoin is like so already entrenched and available to almost all Americans via Coinbase or Cash App or many other applications that it's going to be a very quick turnover once it starts hitting the consciousness of the ordinary person.
And thank you. And then I just had one other question, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but or if it's public information, but were the recent changes for the US investors and the accreditation status, was that like a private settlement such that it could change back, or was that actually following some sort of formal guidance issued by the SEC or other regulators?
Yeah, we can't talk about the specifics, but it's basically Celsius evolving into the changing regulatory environment.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on stage, Allison.
Yeah.
Next up, Fuller.
Hey guys, I don't mean to change the subject, but I saw Nuke kind of hinted a little bit today. I don't know if anybody else saw that about buying coins directly in the app. So that kind of leads me to the next question. I know we had talked about on-ramps being good for California, and that was like right before the news dropped for the non-US accredited. Is that still going, or like what's the news with on-ramps in California?
Yeah, they were supposed to go live today, but there was a few last-minute bugs. So they're working on that now, and we'll release it in the very near future for California. And then we're in the background working with many other states through a variety of methods so that we can bring that fiat onboarding to as many people as we can.
Sweet. Sounds good. I just saw that Nuke had kind of hinted and then was like, oh, crap, I realized I don't know if I should have said anything. So I just kind of laughed a little bit, but good to hear that those are still going. So that's my only question. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Fuller. Reagan, welcome back up.
Thanks, Josh. Yes, I remember that other question. It was just regarding the UST, how the listing's going on that for international. And also, you spoke about 50 assets coming on this year. And I think there's been maybe, was it three or four so far? I was wondering if you can speak a bit more about what's potentially coming in the coming months. Cheers.
Yeah, we had to slow down a little bit on the assets to make the required changes for this regulatory update. So I know that's getting back on track, and they're still making some changes to the app to make the user experience better with the new custody solution. So that slowed us down a little bit, but a lot of these assets are going to also work with GK8, where they're just going to support them as custody and not necessarily earn yield. And we can make up for a lot of lost time and do larger batches of assets. So I think at the end of this year, we're still going to hit plus 50. But there's a little pause right now because we had to take some emergency actions.
That's cool. Does that affect the UST, which wasn't going to be available for US anyway?
I thought Terra was still. Oh, I guess that I think Terra, the asset, is available to non-US, and then UST will be brought to non-US, but it might actually bring to US as well. I don't think that UST is considered a security, but I haven't heard any specifics about that.
Okay, cool. I'll keep watching. Thanks.
Thanks, Reagan. Taylor, you're up next.
Hey guys, yeah, just wanted to say thanks, kind of for everything you do and constantly like having these talks. Sorry, I was about to eat something and decided not to. Yeah, I was kind of confused about the first comment, so I jumped on stage. So was the question like why are banks not leveraged? Was that the point? Was that kind of the what I was understanding? Because I'm pretty sure they are. I just don't know if
It
they're
wasn't
leveraged.
about leverage. It was about where at what point is the new money created. We all agreed that there's new money entering the system, and it was my understanding and Otis's understanding that money is created at the point of that new loan at the commercial banks. And then the other gentleman was saying that no, it's not created at that point. It's created directly by the Fed. So that was the.
But then the other gentleman also clarified it, where
right.
He said the money comes back in 20, which is the same as what I was basically saying.
Yeah, but then
the bank the bank doesn't have it. It comes back in 24 hours. They may have that, but they couldn't. If they were to fund everybody's loan at the same time, I mean, I don't see how that would even be possible.
Yeah, and again, I'm still of the understanding that it's created at the commercial level, because if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, it's 8 trillion, 9 trillion, but way more money has been created than that. So that has to be created from somewhere.
Where's the money coming from?
Right, and to my understanding, it was central or commercial banks. In every loan that they make on cars, on houses, on whatever. But the gentleman was saying to the opposite. So we'll have to do some more research on that. When I think the scariest part of everything is that it's hard to get a straight answer. Like even if you search
that
on
is
YouTube,
very scary.
Yeah, it's like nobody. Yeah. It's interesting to see like the dollar is critical in all of our lives, but I mean, it's not like one of those things where just some people understand it, but the vast majority don't. It's like almost nobody can agree exactly how the dollar works and where the dollar is created and how much is in supply and all of these things. So, I'm not saying I'm an expert on the dollar or the financial system. I've done a lot of learning via other professionals on YouTube and other sources, but where can you get 100% straight answer? Because I know they don't talk about this stuff at the Fed meetings.
I asked the mortgage guy a follow-up question also. I asked him if Americans stop taking loans, if all Americans stop taking loans, what happens to the system? His answer was it collapses. If the banks have the money to lend, why would the system collapse? The banks have the money. So why, if we stop taking loans, the system collapse? That answers the question.
So
no new loans, the system collapses.
So should we be more scared about inflation or deflation then? Because in deflation, we stop taking loans, right?
Listen, it's all bad. It's all bad.
From my understanding,
fiat is fraud. It's all bad. And as what Zach just said, the fact that we can't agree on something that touches every facet of our lives and that we know nothing about and that we have to go research and agree to disagree on is a problem, a big one.
Deflation is two things. It's like there's deflation in prices going down because of reduced demand, and then there's deflation of the destruction of money. And so I don't think that we've ever seen a long period of the destruction of money. Again, look at all money supply metrics over time. They always go up and to the right. So I think if we were to stop taking new loans, the interest on previous loans would still have to be paid, and that would effectively destroy money, creating a deflation, a reduction in the money supply, and that's when you get like a 1929 depression, and the prices of assets collapse, the amount of commerce taking place collapses, and then everything collapses for an extended period.
Wow. Yeah, I think like deflation, I don't know, I think Kathy Woods, I listen to her a lot, has since like 2020, even though she's getting bashed pretty hard, but yeah, I think deflation's kind of coming.
Well, if you look at like again, her definition of deflation is also very true on I think it's all, who's the guy that we spoke with, Josh?
Jeff Booth. Yep.
Jeff Booth. His concept of inflation, which is human progress, and I saw it in my life directly when I bought a 2013 Toyota Corolla and I bought a 2020 Toyota Corolla, and I paid almost exactly the same price, just $200 difference. But the 2020 Corolla is way better in so many different ways. And you'd have to ask, wait, there's been inflation in those 7 years. And then there was deflation because the car got way better, but the price stayed the same. So in that type of deflation where everything becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, prices should be going down, but it's counteracted and then overcome by the amount of money printing, which is creating inflation. But again, in CPI, they don't consider that, right? Computers get better and better every year. That's deflation, but that's not considered when you're looking at these kind of numbers.
Cool. How much power do we have? So if I deposit like $10,000 in my bank, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, is that effectively like taking 70,000 away from the bank of their
100,000 or more depends.
Yeah.
It used to be 10% reserve, but now it's unlimited.
And
we don't. A lot of us don't even. I haven't even heard an announcement, but we know it's unlimited.
In when COVID happened, they dropped rates to zero. One of the other actions they did was they completely removed the reserve requirement, and I don't think that's been reinstated. And again, I don't know if that was truly a limiting factor, but there used to be a reserve requirement, and now there is none since 2020, and I don't think they brought it back. So that's also another very scary thing. How leveraged are they, truly?
And if you have enough money, why do you need to get rid of the reserve requirement? If you have enough money to lend, why do you need to get rid of that?
You should be able to look this up, Taylor. Last I saw was 8-to-1 leverage for our average American banks.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to give people like kind of like just explain that you do have power. Most people are like, I only have $500 in my account, or like 2,000 or whatever, and it's like it's a lot more than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions or comments we can help you out with up on stage?
No, I'm good. Just wanted to say thanks. Like, I really appreciate it. Every time I've jumped on here, like every Tuesday, you guys have been on the mark every time. So I don't think we give you enough credit for that. We appreciate it a lot.
We appreciate you. Thanks for coming up. Alex, what's going on? Alex Tamayo.
Yeah, you got it the last time, Tamayo. Hey, Josh.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah, that's right. I hope you're doing well. Hey, my question is, with the new, regulatory environment and the changes that were made, will it affect Celsius' ability to earn yield like they're doing now and be able to provide the same amount of APY for our coins that are currently, that stayed in earn? Or will it affect it negatively?
No, it shouldn't have any effect at all. One, because all existing users and assets were grandfathered in. So our business is running the exact same today as it was 2 weeks ago. The only potential thing is it's going to restrict the new types of users that we can bring on. In some states, we're not allowed to bring new users on at all. In some states, they can only use custody or certain other products. So, there is a little bit of a headwind there, but, this is only the US we're talking about and only non-accredited users. So as a subset of our entire asset pool, it's not going to hurt Celsius, and it really doesn't have any effect on our ability to earn yield on that. That's kind of, as Celsius grows and develops, Celsius is getting even more efficient at deploying yield. Over the long term, when we're talking years, we're much more efficient today than we were 2-3 years ago.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you, Josh. I'm sorry, Scott. No, Zach. Third time's the charm.
Well, there you go.
Third
You
time's
got
the
it.
charm. Oh man, that's funny. Last question. I know that we've been getting into mining lately, and a certain amount of the business goes towards mining. What would you say is the ratio now between our lending business and our mining business? Like the ratio, like is it 70% lending, 30% mining?
I really don't have a number on that at all. I would have to. I didn't get to talk to our mining head in Miami, so I don't have any information there.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for coming up, Alex. Norm, you're up next. Norm, make sure if you're speaking, you unmute.
I met Norm, and I can say he's 100% the same online as he is in person. So Norm's
Absolutely.
legit.
He just dropped from stage, so I guess he didn't have any questions. Brandon, what's going on?
Hey guys, I was very active in the community back when it was on Clubhouse, and have been busy with life and slightly out of commission. So I'm just getting caught up on all the recent happenings. But I'm a U.S. guy, so certainly disappointed with the news about the earning yield. But luckily, had almost everything I own in Celsius as far as crypto, nearly all of it. So it'll stay there and continue to earn interest, and I appreciate that. But I had a few questions, all of them, I believe, relatively easy and brief to answer, if you don't mind. So first, around the same time that we lost our ability to add funds for yield, I also, in my state, seem to have lost the ability to do almost anything on Celsius. I can't borrow, which I was able to do just a few days ago. Swap didn't have available, but I can't even deposit. I can't even send any new coins. My question is, was there stuff happening at the state level that was newsworthy that might have been overshadowed by the SEC response?
What state are you in?
Yeah, it's got to
North
be
Carolina,
New York.
Charlotte.
Oh, North Carolina. Yeah. So there were 9 states that had more restrictions put on them. North Carolina being one of them, New York, Washington, a few others. And it kind of goes back to each state has its own rules on what we're allowed to do. So some of those states, even we can't custody assets. You can just hold what you have in there, but not even add to it on the custody side or use other products. So, look in your app and see what's available to you. And each state has its own rules, and there were some additional changes on a handful of states that were more severe.
Okay, and that happened recently, from my
Yeah,
experience.
it all happened at the same time.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if it was an interface bug. Was my concern, I suppose. But well, I'm moving anyway, so that's okay. My next question is there interest with Alex or amongst Celsius of creating a new solution that would earn yield that's not considered a security? Is there any hope for us to have a solution that is SEC compatible?
you can't work around kind of the attention of regulators, and we've been working with regulators and talking with them for several years now. So we're doing this the best we can, and we're always keeping our community at our heart and trying to work in their best interests. But the situation is still evolving, and down the road there could be other changes. But I can't really go into any more detail than that.
Understandable. I had just heard of, I think BlockFi had found a solution to, or is potentially working on a solution that would make regulators happy, that would be available to unaccredited investors. I wasn't sure if that was an avenue that Celsius was pursuing or not. Over time, we've seen yields go down. I think everyone is familiar with that. And we understand that the market rate prevails, and that the ability to lend these deposits out affects the yield we earn. Is there anything you can point to in particular, any market dynamics that are driving the reduction in yield that we've seen in the last year?
Yeah, definitely. The big one was when Russia invaded Ukraine. It created a huge risk-off event. So a ton of people stopped borrowing because there was an enormous amount of uncertainty. And I think there's just been a growing amount of uncertainty over the last 6 months. But, I think also there's like a trend effect where rates were going down for a short period relative to, the last 5 years. And that made people feel like, oh, rates are going to go to zero. I think Josh actually just posted a picture of Celsius in like 2019, and the stablecoin rates back then were at 7%. And they were coming up, and they went all the way up to 12, and then now they've come back down at the same 7.1%. So it's all just relative and all based on market dynamics, and then also our efficiency and ability to deploy these assets. And that's something like Joshua and the CelsiusX team, that's a major part of why we're building that, is to much more efficiently deploy assets on DeFi, including Bitcoin, by wrapping it and putting it on different blockchains. So Celsius is an aggregating machine. That's our primary thing. We generate yield, and then we send that yield back to our community in a number of different ways. So it's a battle between the more assets we get, the more efficient and the better we have to be at generating yield with those assets. I know it feels like magic to our users. You put in Bitcoin or Ethereum or stable coins, and then more of those coins show up. But there's an entire machine on the back end of that, deploying these coins effectively, safely, and constantly at the best rates possible to generate those new coins. This yield is not coming out of nowhere or being subsidized. It's being generated every second of every day.
Yeah, I wondered how much, it seems like there's now a lot more competition in the yield generation area than there was before. And certainly there's, if you flood the market with opportunities to borrow for these institutional investors, the rates will go down. And that if that trend continues, I don't know if we'll end up with, at no fault of Celsius, but end up with
you got to look at the other trend too, is the adoption of Bitcoin and financial institutions using and trading and supporting Bitcoin. Every time a big bank adopts selling Bitcoin, for example, they need Bitcoin liquidity, and Celsius is one of the largest providers of that. So this market is still relatively small compared to where it can be in the next handful of years. And so there's, still a massive amount of opportunity that hasn't been unlocked for when it comes to lending. So even if we double our Bitcoin size, the market is definitely going to more than double in the next couple of years for lending opportunities.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. That's certainly encouraging. And lastly, I'd like to advocate for a feature request that I sent in formally in an email to Alex months ago, but I still think is something that could be incredibly beneficial for Celsius users. So onboarding is always a challenge, onboarding and offboarding. There's a company called Bitwage that allows you to kind of reduce the friction between your bank accounts and your earning, your paychecks, your earnings, from reduce the friction between that and your crypto holdings. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Bitwage. I have some issues with Bitwage, or else I would use it. They have hidden fees they don't like to talk about or disclose unless you ask very specifically, things of that nature, and the fees. So I want to advocate very briefly for that feature set. I think that the power of Celsius, and I'm thankful, even with all the the change in rates and the constant evolution of features based on regulatory environment. Even with all that, I'm very thankful for Celsius, and I think a lot of people would benefit. A lot more people would benefit from it if they were able to use it for savings in ways that they use other TradFi products for savings. So what Bitwage does, for those who don't know, you set up an account with Bitwage. They issue you a routing number and account number, and then you can go to your employer and have your paycheck split to send a portion to that routing number. It gets automatically converted to crypto and sent to the address that you specify. The ability to do that would go a long way towards helping people with like dollar cost average into crypto, be able to take it out of their check before they see it. All these kind of psychological tricks, or tricks isn't the right word, but habits that are known to increase savings rates among people. And it really gives access to people who are intimidated by buying on Coinbase and then sending it over to this wallet and all of this stuff. They are able to deposit and withdraw with a routing number and checking account number. I would love nothing more than to be able to split my paycheck, split $100 off of it every check, and have it automatically show up in Celsius as a deposit into the crypto I choose. I've emailed my case before, but I wanted to just bring it into other people's view here, because it's something I think could potentially make Celsius an attractive user for people who are intimidated by the crypto space. I can think of multiple family members of mine that won't touch this because every time I explain how to do it, their eyes glaze over. But if I told them to sign up for Celsius, they'll give you bank details, send $500 to it, or whatever, split your paycheck a little bit off each check into that. They would certainly do it, and it would give the independent contractors, artists, and others the ability to accept payments with almost no friction in crypto, despite their clients having no idea that they're paying somebody in crypto. So I just wanted to advocate for that, and that's all I have. Thanks for your answers, and as always, thanks for being so close with your community and doing these the AMAs, the YouTube and Twitter Spaces. It's one of the best features of Celsius, if you ask me. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks for coming up, Brandon, and appreciate those words. This is what we do. We'll always be here to keep an open dialogue with you guys. On that note, I think we're going to wrap for the night, guys. Please make sure you're following myself, Zach, and Scott. Obviously, Plan C and Miss Teen Crypto are a load of information online here. So if you guys are interested in everything crypto, check them out, particularly Bitcoin with Plan C. Otis, Aziz, thank you guys for joining us up here on stage. And if we didn't get to your question tonight, just come back for the next one. We'll see you next Tuesday. And don't forget, we run these rooms throughout the week with South Texan and Celsius, bro. Any final words from my co-hosts?
Appreciate everyone being here. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. This is where financial education takes place. All of us talking to each other, learning and discussing these topics that not a lot of people hear about on other sources. So continue your education. There's so much information on YouTube for free. Check that out, or spend $25 a month to get that premium. And you can listen to content as much as you want without having to deal with commercials and stuff like that. It's probably the best money you could spend to get educated.
Yeah, and I would say that we may disagree on exactly where the money is being printed, But one thing is for sure, we know that the government is printing money out of thin air. The banks are printing money out of thin air. So that's a problem. And we believe that crypto is the way to fix that. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Alex should be joining us next week. So, yeah, he's still traveling, but hopefully that will be concluded by next week and he'll be with us. All right, guys, have a good rest of your night. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay zesty, friends.